Hallelujah. There's nothing else than to worship the King of Kings, our Messiah Yeshua, and to bring glory and honor to Him. More so as we see the days of Noah approaching us. As I was preparing for today, I had a conversation with somebody and sort of in a joke said, I never thought that Matthew 24 should be taken thus literally that it will be in the end as in the days of Noah, because it just doesn't stop raining. We are now 3 months without stop. It's just raining and raining, 3 months. And we can't even get to our house. The last 300 meters we have to walk to our house because we have to stop. Because, not even a 4x4 can get there. So we have to walk there for 300 meters, the last area. But as I was making that sort of joke to somebody, said, well, I never thought that Matthew 24 should be taken as literally, that in the end it will be raining and we have to invest in rubber ducks and canoes. I thought, well, perhaps I should actually go and read Matthew 24 again and just have a look in terms of what is standing there and what is its relevance for us today. And one particular piece of Matthew 24 always intrigued me. And as I was preparing for today, I thought I saw something that I would like to submit to you and also for testing, which I thought, well, it's the first time that I've seen it this way. And perhaps it could be of use. So, Matthew 24. And learn this parable from the fig tree. When its branch has already become tender and put forth leaves, you know that the summer is near. So you also, when you see all these, know that He is near at the doors. Truly I say to you, this generation shall by no means pass away until all this takes place. The heaven and the earth shall pass away, but my words shall by no means pass away. But concerning that day and the hour no one knows, not even the messengers of heaven, but my Father only. The fact that there are uncertainty about the return of our Messiah. There are things that we know, but then there's a lot of things that we don't know, is to invoke faith. Because if we could have engineered that day through one way or another, then we didn't need faith. Are we together? So the fact that there are uncertainties is so that we can continue to worship Him and seek His face and not engineer things for our own rational thinking. In the end of the day, we are people of faith. We are spiritually minded people. We are not to work out these things using computers and mathematical programs. If it was left to mathematical programs and computers, then there was no need for faith. And then just following that, continuing the passage, and as the days of Noah, so also shall the coming of the Son of Adam be. We were singing about the Son of Adam just now, worshipping Him. For as they were in the days before the flood, eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered into the ark, and they did not know until the flood came and took them all away, and also shall the coming of the Son of Adam be. The coming of the Son of Adam will be like the flood, taking them away. The question is, who was taken away? Noah or the others? Let's read that again. For as in the days before the flood, eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day of Noah entered into the ark, and they did not know until the flood came and took them all away. Those who were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, who were just partying on, were taken away. So that speaks into a big theological issue, as I'm sure everybody in this room and will appreciate, as to who's been taken away here. I'm not going to talk about the whole rapture thing now, but just to mention that the rapture theory was born in the mid-1850s, 1860s. It's about 150 years old, that theology. It didn't exist before the 1800s. So it's a very new invention. So up until the mid-1800s, nobody really thought about it. And it had a very unhappy start. So, who is taking away? Noah or the others? The others. Do you want to be part of the others? Probably not. There are two conditions before the return of Messiah that we've just read. A planted fig tree that must tell us that summer is near. Somewhere there must be a planted fig tree, and then that fig tree must tell us summer is near. And it's actually two things there. First there must be a fig tree, and then the fig tree must tell us summer is near. I think right through Scripture, it's very clear that the fig tree refers to Israel. It's an illustration for Israel. So Israel must be planted somewhere, and then Israel must have branches that's becoming soft. And then he will be at the door. So the question then is, clearly there are two things. The tree must be planted, and then it must grow, and then at some point in time, it must have soft branches. As to the establishment of the fig tree, there are many different views in terms of what that could entail. But what is very clear is that Israel in Scripture refers to a covenant, a land, and 12 tribes. A covenant, a land, and 12 tribes. And that covenant and that 12 tribes and that land is defined by Torah. That's the basis. Johan spoke about this about a month ago. And when I saw it and realized what he was talking about, the significance thereof, the Ezekiel 4 prophecy, where Ezekiel had to lie on his one side for 390 days, representing 390 years, multiplying that with the 7 times principle of Leviticus, bringing us to 2,730 years of exile of Israel out of the land. I'm talking about 12 tribes of Israel out of the land. That exile started in the year 734 AD and ended in 722 AD. Adding the 2,700 years to that, it brings us to somewhere in the mid-1990s to somewhere about 2010, 2015. We all were alive in that period of time. Those who were not alive now is in the children's church. Everybody who is alive, fell in that bracket. What happened during that bracket? An absolute awakening of the knowledge of the Torah, love for Israel, and the knowledge of who the covenantal Father is, and the studying and the reading of Torah all over the world happened during that period of time. Could that be that period of time is when the branches softened and started to show green leaves? The fig tree was planted before, but now the branches are getting soft, getting ready. Summer is near. Everybody in this room either got convinced by the Spirit to start studying Torah, observing Shabbat, honoring Leviticus 11 in terms of what to eat, Leviticus 18 in terms of what is a holy union between a man and a wife, and Leviticus 23 in terms of the appointments. All of us somehow got convinced of that during that period. Isn't that amazing? The fig tree is softening up. Or you're influenced by somebody who was affected during that time period. An amazing time period. It's never ever happened before. Right across the world, that there's such a movement. In the time period of the end of the exile. How special is that? The restoration of the land, the Torah, and the covenantal people in that time slot. In the generation that the fig tree's branches are tender, it must become like the days of Noah. The second condition. The end of the days of Noah is only when the son of Adam comes. When the son of Adam comes, he'll sort that out, he will take that away. But it must become like the days of Noah. During that generation, when the fig tree's branches are becoming soft. The two conditions. Can we say, without reasonable doubt, that this is the generation? I don't know. I don't think anybody can say, yes, that is definitely the case. But it sure does look like it. It sure does look like it. And then, what we've just read in Matthew 24 is, that generation will not pass away. And then the Son of Man will come. That generation, during which the fig tree tells us that summer is near, and that generation, when it will become like the days of Noah, that generation will not pass away before the Son of Man will return. So, it's very quiet in the room now. I wonder why. I know this is rather heavy to start the thing with. I mean, I hope you've brought given that all the rain, that you've brought all your things that you put on your arms for swimming. What do you call it? All your vlerkies. Yeah. Yeah. He's prophesying. He says this generation is prophesying. So he's prophesying the entire Matthew 23, 24, 25 is a prophetic speech, the final speech of our Messiah, just before his crucifixion. And he's prophesying about the end and about things that's to come. So he's answering a question earlier in Matthew 24 where they ask him, when will we know what these things will happen? He says, these things, that generation. So it's in that context. Which, as I've said, do we know for certain? Prophecy is of such a nature that you know it when it has happened. But in order to invoke faith, we must still be searching the truth and be watchful. As I've said when we started. We cannot engineer these things, because then there's no faith. The passage that always confounded me and what I was worried about and couldn't understand is this eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage. Why not just say, and they got married? There's no word in Scripture unnecessary. No word too many. And no word too late. Not enough. That's been left out. And they did not know. So during that period, there is total indifference as to the coming judgment. There's blindness to the ongoing fornication, the iniquity and the wickedness of what is happening and what is the consequences thereof. The ongoing partying and the conclusion of human blood covenants, which has happened during the days of Noah, and we'll talk about that shortly. Surrounded by comfort, business as usual, pleasure, debauchery, etc. So there's this blindness given everything that is happening. And we spoke about the idols of our time earlier, a few weeks ago. The me frog, the pleasure frog, the science frog, the environment frog, and the control frog. The idols. That is reaching a pinnacle. That's reaching a high point. Because the eating and drinking, marrying, giving in marriage, and they did not know, signifies a spiritual blindness in terms of the prevailing circumstances and the spiritual climate of the time. But is there more than meets the eye? So let's read Genesis 6 itself, because it is said that it will be like in the days of Noah. And it came to be, when men began to increase in the face of the earth, and daughters were born to them, that the sons of Elohim saw that the daughters of men, and that they were good. And they took wives for themselves, all of whom they chose. What is very clear in that phrasing, and what becomes clear in subsequent sections that I'm going to read, is that what that phrase means is that the mixing knew no boundaries, including animals, including children. The mixing knew no boundaries. It was complete mixing, total mixing. And Jehovah said, my spirit shall not strive with man forever in his going astray. He is flesh, and his days shall be 120 years. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterwards, when the sons of Elohim came into the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. Those were the mighty men who were of old, men of name. And Jehovah saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. So there was no stopping of the evil. It was building up and building up and building up. It was accumulating. And Jehovah was sorry that he had made man on earth, and he was grieved in his heart. And Jehovah said, I am going to wipe off man whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast. The reason for the and beast is because of the complete mixing. That the beast was also had to be, even though they have not sinned, they were affected. Creeping creature and bird of the heaven, for I am sorry that I have made them. But Noah found favor in the eyes of Jehovah, and we'll get back to that phrase later. So from what we've just read, a few very important pointers. The first is, the sons of Elohim saw that the daughters of men, that they were good. And this is a topic of massive controversy. Sons of Elohim could also be translated as sons of authority. Many commentaries believe that what that is referring to is that it was the sons of Cain who married the daughters of Seth, and that created a mixing between the two. And that when it is said that the men became big, then it referred to being big in sin. And truly, it was big in sin. Problem, however, is what do you do with Goliath, Oak of Bashan? That we walked around and the son of the Anakim were there, and we were like grasshoppers in their sight. What do you make with that? So they were giants. They were physically big. So there's another problem. And that is that the word good, tov, as is in Genesis 1 verse 4, is spelled tet, vav, bet. And it means good in the sense of fit for purpose. So he created something, and he says it's tov. It's good and fit for its purpose, for its created order, for that for which it was established. And it was good in that sense, beautifully made, fit for its purpose. In this verse, there's no vav. It's spelled tet, bet. The vav has been removed. The consequence of this removal of the vav is phenomenal. The lost vav means that it only appears good, but it's not. Because what does the vav mean? It's a hook, it's a nail, it is the connector. It is the connector between that which has been created and its purpose. That connector is lost. When that which has been created and that which has been created for its purpose is lost, you've got something which seems good, but it's not. That missing vav means that there is something who has lost its created purpose. And once it has lost its created purpose, that which is actually making it good, it is transformed into something which Father has not meant it to be. And so now humanity and identity is totally lost. And when we think in terms of the daughters of men, whose created purpose is to be Ezer Kenegtu, to be a corresponding accountability counterpart, it's lost. Until today, we don't really know what it means to be an Ezer Kenegtu. It's lost. And also lost is the males. Vav is also the sixth letter. Stands for humanity. Male absenteeism. Where were the males of that generation standing up for the females, for the women? They were silent. Like Adam was silent in the Garden of Eden. And so we've got the Garden of Eden problem continuing because the men who did not stood up and says, no, leave our daughters alone. Before impregnating them. Standing up there and say, stop, you will not do that. They're not talking about. Males are gone. Male absenteeism. So you've got lost relationships. Females have lost their purpose of creation. No longer Ezer Kenegtu. Males are not there. They're silent. And you've got a complete gemors. Which is the English word in the Free State for it's a mess. That missing vav means it's the total collapse of family. There's no papa, mama, boetie, sissy. It's the total collapse. So it is only the appearance of good, but it has lost its purpose, and therefore it is this big mess. And so as in the days of Noah, females will struggle with their Ezer Kenegtu role, what it means, and the males will be silent. They will not be there. They will not stand up. It's getting really silent now, quiet. And there will be a total collapse of family. Let's continue. So we had the sons of Elohim and the daughters of men, the two characters. They came together, and out of that relationship, which you can't really call a relationship, out of that abuse came the Nephilim. From the word nafal, which means to fall, to be fallen, to ruin, or to have a miscarriage, which refers to a fallen pregnancy. I mean, you can't make this up. I mean, it tells us exactly what happened in the word. There's this fallen pregnancy. And out of that, children and grandchildren. And they were the mighty men who were of old, the men of name. And that's the key to the marrying and the giving in marriage. It was continuing and continuing and continuing, the generation after the generation, until it was continually evil. So now we have a fallen pregnancy in its totality, not according to its created purpose. What has been born is totally ruined. So we have to have our little antennas up and ask, how is this relevant potentially to us or a future generation? Because as we've said, it's one of the conditions, according to Matthew 24, that it will be like in the days of Noah. So I'm not going to read Genesis 6 again, the entire piece. I just want to focus the one, that specific part that says, and Jehovah saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts in his heart was only evil continually. Marrying and giving in marriage, one after the other, going forward. And so the Nephilim was the first, but then there was several children and grandchildren born out of those relationships going forward. And then Genesis 6 continues by saying, and the earth was corrupt, completely ruined, completely fallen before Elohim. And the earth was filled with violence. That violence was physical violence, but also emotional, mental violence, because people could not fulfill their created purpose. They couldn't be Tov with the Vav in. When you take something and you rip it out and you say you can no longer fulfill your purpose, that's abuse. That's violence. Might not be physical violence, but when you can no longer fulfill your created purpose, it's spiritual, mental, emotional violence and abuse. And Elohim looked upon the earth and saw that it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted their way on the earth. And Elohim said to Noah, the end of all flesh has come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them. And I see, I'm going to destroy them from the earth. Making very clear who's going to be destroyed, and who's going to be taken away, and who's going to be left behind. Just one realization here is that our Father has got a created order, established in Genesis 1, confirmed in Genesis 5, that it is kind after kind. And He gave them the ability to reproduce kind after kind. And it is in the book of the genealogy of Adam, in the days of Elohim created man, He created him, Adam, in the likeness of Elohim. And Adam lived 130 years and brought forth a son in his own likeness after his image. So Seth followed in the image of Adam, kind after kind. The falling beings brought forth after their image. Mighty men, men of renown. They are no longer after the image of our father. They are no longer after the image of Adam. They were after the image of their fallen nature. This becomes very important when we think in terms of Revelation 13. Revelation 13 speaks of the image of the beast. The counterfeit Tselem. We are been created in the image, the Tselem of the Father. Revelation 13 speaks of the image of the beast. It speaks about many things, also about the number of the beast and so on, which has got a lot of airtime. But the number of the beast and his name is derived from the image of the beast. The image of the beast drives the rest. It drives the number, it drives the name, everything else. So the beast also has got a tzelem. This tzelem of the beast, this image of the beast, is a counterfeit image. It does not have the ruach of our Father in it. It cannot have. And so these fallen men, fallen beings, they have created after their own image. A fallen image. A counterfeit tzelem. So as in the days of Noah, fast forwarding, should we expect? A counterfeit image. A counterfeit tzelem. That is something that will not be in the image of our Father. I'm going to read 2 short pieces from the Apocrypha. Those are books that stand next to the Scripture. They are not Scripture. You cannot use them as for doctrine. You cannot use them for statements of faith. They are commentaries as to what has happened during those periods. They're much better than the commentaries written in the 1800s and 1900s because they're written by people who were actually there. But they're commentaries. And they provide us with an insight as to what has happened during that period of time to help us guide going forward. First that I'm going to read is a section out of 1 Enoch. And it came to pass when the children of men had multiplied that in those days were born unto them beautiful and comely daughters. Well, we've read that in Genesis as well. And the angels, the children of the heavens, saw and lusted after them and said to one another, Come, let us choose us wives from among the children of men and beget us children. And then there's a whole section of how 200 of them formed a pack and how they came down to Mount Hermon, which I've not copied in here. And then it continues. And all of the others together with them took unto themselves wives, and each chose for himself one, and they began to go in and unto them, and to defile themselves with them. And they taught them charms and enchantments, and the cutting of roots, and made them acquainted with plants, and they became pregnant, and they bare great giants, the Nephilim, whose heights were 3,000 ells. Massive. While consuming all the acquisitions of men. And when the men could no longer sustain them, the giants turned against them and devoured mankind. So these Nephilim were big, and they were constantly hungry. All the ladies in the room will know what I'm talking about. The men in your lives are constantly hungry. You realize that men has got feelings too. I feel hungry. And I feel hungry constantly. These things were hungry. And they had to be fed daily. So just picture this for a moment. These fallen things had the Nephilim from the daughters of men. They're foreign, they're mixed, they're a counterfeit tzelem, but now they demanded all the resources of the humans, of the men who were there. And all the resources were devoured by them, and when it's finished, because the men no longer could sustain them, they turned on the men. And they started to devour them. Let's continue. And they began to sin against the birds and the beasts and the reptiles and the fish, and to devour one another's flesh and to drink the blood. And Azazel taught men to make swords and knives, all sorts of technology things, shields and the breastplates, technology for warfare, I should add. And made known to them the metals of the earth and the art of working them, and bracelets and ornaments, and the use of antimony, and the beautification of the eyelids, vanity in other words, and all the kinds of costly stones and all the coloring structures. And then arose such godliness, and they committed fornication, and they were led astray and became corrupt in all their ways. Exactly what Genesis 6 is talking about. Samyaza taught enchantments and root cutting. Amaros, the resolving of enchantments. Barakael taught astrology. Kokabel, the constellations. Ezekiel, the knowledge of the clouds. Ariekel, the signs of the earth. Shamsil, the signs of the sun. And Sari, the courses of the moon. And as the men perished, they cried, and the cry went up to heaven, as it was in the days of Egypt. They were totally devoured by their new pharaohs, and they cried unto Father. And the cry went up to her Father. So not only did these things devour them all their resources, mentally, ravage the wives, have a mixed offspring, they also taught them in mysticism and taught them in terms of technologies for warfare and taught them everything about vanity and taught them about the parallel universe. Taught them about being out of this, of what is happening out of this cosmos, out of this world. Does that sound somehow familiar of what is happening now? Being a multiplanetary and a multistellar species, learning about what is happening and UFOs and all sorts of things. But it's like the days of Egypt as well. It's remarkable, these connections. Turn to the book of Jubilees. And it came to pass when the children of men began. So this is a second witness. Second commentary, same period, different authors. Second witness. And it came to pass when the children of men began to multiply in the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the angels of God saw of a certain year of this Jubilee that they were beautiful to look upon, and they took for themselves wives, and all whom they chose, and they bore unto them sons, and they were the giants. So the sons were the Nephilim, the giants. And lawlessness increased on the earth, and all flesh corrupted in his way, alike men and cattle, beasts and birds, and everything that walked on the earth. All of them corrupted their ways and their orders. It's no longer kind after kind. There's no longer a specific created order fit for its purpose. It became corrupted in its ways and their orders. And they began to devour each other, and lawlessness increased on the earth. And every imagination of the thoughts of all men was thus evil continually, as we've read in the book of Genesis. And God looked upon the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, and all flesh had corrupted its orders. And all that were upon the earth had wrought all manner of evil before the eyes. And he said, I shall destroy man and all flesh upon the face of the earth, which I have created. But Noah found grace before the eyes of the Lord. And in the 28th Jubilee of Noah began to join upon his sons. But basically what happened is a fascinating piece as to where he basically called his grandchildren. He sat his grandchildren down and he says, well, let granddaddy tell you the rule of the land. And he recounted basically how his grandchildren should live, and basically give them the Torah as to what he knew at that point in time. And ordinances and commandments and all the judgments that he knew. So the light that he has had, he then shared with his grandchildren and said to them how they should live. And he exhorted his sons to observe righteousness and to cover the shame of their flesh, and to bless their Creator, and to honor the father and the mother, and to love their neighbor, and to guard their souls from fornication, uncleanness, and all iniquity. For owing to these three things, these three things being the fornication, the uncleanness, and the iniquity, because of these three things came the flood upon the earth. Namely, owing to the fornication wherein the watchers being the sons of authority, the sons of Elohim, a different word for it, against the law of their ordinances, against how they should operate, went and whoring after the daughters of men, and took themselves wives of all which they chose, and they made the beginning of uncleanness. And they begat sons of the Nephilim, and they were all unlike. It's not that they were like kind after kind. So all of them looked the same. No. They all were then different in how they function and their appearances. And they devoured one another. The giants slew the Nephilim, and the Nephil slew the Eljo, and the Eljo the mankind, and one man another. And everyone sold himself to work iniquity, and to shed much blood on the earth was filled with iniquity. It was a mess. But enough of that. One can only bear so much of that detail. But the big thing that is coming out from what we've just read is how the kind after kind order and fit for purpose as our Father has created it was destroyed. So when we start to think in terms of as in the days of Noah, we should think in terms of, do we see kind after kind being destroyed? Do we see something where it's no longer the Tselem of our Elohim that is continuing? Are we seeing something of His created order and that which is made fit for purpose, Tov, with the Vav, Tet, Vav, Bet, destroyed? Do we see something of that corrupted with the Vav removed? Only the appearance of good and not really being good. Genesis 1, Genesis 2 is speaking about this in terms of how He has created us. He has created all mankind and the beasts with a nefesh. Basically easy to think about a nefesh as it's the flesh. It helps you to sort of associate it, the full being. But only humans has got a neshama, a ruach, a spirit. The pre-flood fornication did not produce things, children, beings with a neshama. They were all different, kind after their kind. They were only nefesh, the neshama, the ruach carrying image was gone. And so not producing kind after kind. And the question then is, if you don't carry the image of our Father, if you don't carry the ruach of our Father, if you are not neshama, can you be saved? Can you be redeemed? The answer is no. Only the neshama, the ruach, the spirit, can be redeemed. So these beings that were brought forth were unredeemable and had to be wiped. As is also then many of the nations against whom our fathers fought, the sons of the Anakim, who bore some of that seed, mixed seed. In summary, to try to take this a bit forward and deeper in the characteristics of the Nephilim, they were according to their own and varying order. Not kind after kind, not in the image of the Father or an Adam, in the line of Seth. Not having the breath of life, the neshama of our Father breathed into their nostrils. Unredeemable. Non-humans. But it ravished women physically, emotionally, mentally, tremendously. And so women started to bear the brunt of this ravishing going on. And it deprived women of being able to function as their connector, as their accountability counterpart to their husbands. It started small, 200. But it became incredibly powerful. It grew. So we also have to take note of this. It started small, and then it grew until it has overtaken the entire world, enslaving mankind and mankind to work for them. Yet they were never satisfied. They were always hungry, always wanted more. And they taught humans, people, all kinds of things in terms of the tree of knowledge, from the art of warfare, chemistry, geology, vanity, mystics, enchantment, drugs, cosmology, etc. That brings us to transhumanism. This is not my definition, this is the definition of the Britannica. Transhumanism is a philosophy and a scientific movement that advocates the use of current and emerging technologies such as genetic engineering, cryonics, artificial intelligence, and nanotechnology to augment human capabilities and improve the human condition. The movement proposes that humans with augmented capabilities will evolve into an enhanced species that transcends humanity, the post-human. To use technology to create a new human. That's not a human. This is 4,500 years after Noah, where we are now. But we've just read about this. The definition according to World Economic Forum reads as follows. The previous one was the Britannica. This is the World Economic Forum's definition. Our frail version 1.0 human bodies. How arrogant. How arrogant to say that of the created human, of us, of what Father has created. Our frail version of 1.0 human bodies will be transformed into their far more durable and capable version 2.0 counterpart. What arrogance. That is just ridiculous. It is rooted in the belief. Okay, so it's a statement of faith. If you say something is rooted in the belief, then it's a statement of faith. So this is a religion. That humans can and will be enhanced by the genetic engineering and the information technology of today, as well as anticipated advances such as bioengineering, artificial intelligence, and molecular nanotechnology. The result is an iteration of Homo sapiens enhanced or augmented, but still be fundamentally human, but mixed. And there's all kinds of things that has been used to get that. This is horrible. I mean, it's like science fiction, but it's real. It's not science fiction. It's happening. So, these enhanced human beings, which you can't really call human beings anymore, will then reproduce kind after its mixed kind. Last weekend, there was a panel discussion by a set of humanoids. And it's called the AI for Good Global Summit. And I find it very interesting that they use the word good in there. Tov, but clearly no Vav involved there. And these humanoids have had a debate. Imagine that. Bunch of computers talking to one another. And they've got this debate, these humanoids. And the outcome of the debate, of this panel discussion, is that they can run the world better than humans can. And sometimes one part of me feels that it's probably possible, but the consequence hereof is tremendous. So It's not as if we're talking about something that is like far in the future. Last weekend, I want to draw your attention to how they have been dressed. I mean, it's not coincidence how they've been dressed. It also tries to tell us something. Remember, they can't dress themselves. Not yet. They can. Incredibly powerful computers. Revelation 13, which I've referred to earlier, is saying the following. And there was given to him to give spirit to the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause to be killed as many as would not worship the image of the beast. Is it possible? Is it possible? I'm asking. Because these things speak. They talk. They think for themselves, and they can actually communicate with one another, and they think they're better than us. A smaller number. They're not many of them yet. And in the process, we've got a big process of dehumanization going on. What does this dehumanization involve? Human 1.0, as sitting in this room, have all been made male and female. He created us, male and female. And I think we all know what a male and a female is. Revelation 12, just before Revelation 13, what we've just read, we read the following. And there came to be fighting in the heaven Michael, and the messengers fought against the dragon, and the dragon and his messengers fought, but they were not strong enough, nor was a place found for them in the heaven no longer. And the great dragon was thrown out, the serpent of old, called the devil and Satan, who lead all the worlds astray. He was thrown out to the earth, and his messengers were thrown out with him. Also the sons of Elohim were thrown out to the earth. And out of that became the Nephilim. Because of this, rejoice, O heaven, and you who dwell in them. Woe to the earth and to the sea, because of the devil has come down to you, having great wrath, knowing that he has little time. And when the dragon saw that he had been thrown to the earth, he persecuted the woman who gave birth to the male child. He couldn't get to the male child. He went after the woman. Now, I know many commentaries, many people are talking about this, that this is idiomatic speech to the bride of the Messiah. Yes, that's true on one level. But it's also true on a biophysical level. Going for the women. Why? And the dragon was enraged with the woman. And he went to fight with the remnant of her seed, and the word there is sperma. Those guarding the commandments of Elohim and the possessing of the witness of Yeshua Messiah. He couldn't get to the male child, but he's going for the woman who bore life to that child. Yes, there's a dimension, a spiritual dimension referring to the Kahal, the body of believers, people of faith. But it's also a biophysical aspect, because it's generational. But no normal female has sperm. It doesn't exist. Sperm contains the X and the Y chromosome. It defines biological sex, male or female. He's at war with that. That which is required for natural biological reproduction and gender differentiation. We are in a war zone around natural reproduction. And there are these two forces, this war zone about natural reproduction and transhumanism working together. A month ago, to the day, 15 June, scientists report the creation of first human synthetic model embryos. A team of researchers have created the world's first synthetic human embryo-like structures from stem cells, bypassing the need for egg and sperm, no longer needing eggs and sperm to create a human, well, something that resembles a human. The war against females, people created by God to bear a child, to nurture a child, and to bring a child into the world and nurture him or her. In other words, destroying the created purpose, destroying the tov, removing the vav. And so, the transgender agenda is not about equality, but about the dehumanization, even demonization of especially women. And it paves the way for transhumanism and the ability to reproduce, to give birth through AI technology and lab-generated organisms. Something else, which is not human. A creation of a superhuman, a human 2.0, as in the days of Noah. These two agendas are working together, hand in hand. The one is a solution to the other one. The super unredeemable formal human beings or humans, or the ravishing of women, no natural reproduction, destroying of the clean seed, and creating a mixed seed. Are we in those days? We still cannot say that for certain. But there are clear indications that some prerequisites are being put in place. These prerequisites are very important markers for us to help us guide going forward. And the more that we see that, the more we must cherish our faith and our Father. And it comes from Genesis 3, I will put enmity between you and the woman, between your seed and her seed. That's Revelation 12, Revelation 13. That's Matthew 24. So how do we overcome? With this I would like to conclude. Well, Revelation 12 is telling us how we should overcome. And they overcame him because of the blood of the Lamb, which we sang about, which we praised him. He is our King. And because of the word of their witness. And they did not love their lives to death. The word of their witness. I'm very much struck by the word of our Father to the world's greatest prophet of all time, Moses. I've just taken out where that segment stands, and Jehovah spoke to Moses in the book of Exodus. In the book of Leviticus, it doubled, more than doubled. And more than tripled in the book of Numbers. For the journey through the wilderness, he was the most vocal. And I take great encouragement from that. That in the time of being in the wilderness, he was the most vocal. Leviticus, wonderful. Exodus, very specific. These are all the quotes that I could find. Jehovah spoke to Moses. Jehovah spoke to Moses. For the time in the wilderness, he was the most vocal. And so by the word of their testimony, in this time, in the wilderness, we have a Messiah, a Father, who knows about what is the situation. And he will be vocal to his people. He will reveal himself to his people. And guide them. And after this, silence fell. Deuteronomy from next week on. And Moses spoke to the Israel. Moses recounted the story. That piece, highlighted in red, is today's reading of the Torah portion. Masai Matot. It's a mouthful. It's a lot. In the bigger scheme of things, you would like to think, but that's a substantial part. So here's the creator of the universe speaking to his beloved prophet, the greatest prophet of all times, for the final time. And these are the number of times that he says, and Jehovah spoke to Moshe. Do you think that there is something in there for us? To guide us through our journey through the wilderness. Because, so a person's final words is heavy. All the words are heavy. But these are heavier than heavy. Because this is the final words of Jehovah spoke to Moshe. It deals with vengeance on unrighteousness. Can we take courage in that? There will be vengeance of unrighteousness. Driving out the inhabitants out of the land. Oh, but there's a fig tree that branches are getting soft because they need to go back to the land of the covenant. So the inhabitants of the land, those who are not following the word of our Father, needs to be driven out. It's establishing the boundaries of the land in this week's Torah portion. Saying, who gets what? What is the legacy and the inheritance of his beloved people? He gives cities to the Levites, establishing the priestly order in order to facilitate worship. Cities of refuge. Rian's read it for us. For his grace, his kindness, with the return of our Messiah. And it concludes with justice to the female heirs. Isn't that astonishing? He's talking about the restoration of the fig tree. He's talking about the restoration of the family. He's talking about the restoration of the whole of Israel. And he's telling us how it is going to happen and what needs to happen. And so we can take great encouragement from it. By the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. As we believe in our Messiah, and as we see things unraveling and folding in the world, as we see these two things working together, the fig tree becoming softer and ready for summer, and the sun and the days of Noah nearing, and they seems to be in conflict with one another. There seems to be tension between the two, because the fig tree becoming ready for summer and bearing fruit is like joyous. The days of Noah is like, oh dear. They are in tension with one another. How do we overcome? The word of the Messiah, the blood of the Lamb, the word of our testimony, the final words of our Father to Moses is giving us the agenda to restoration and healing. He will bring vengeance on the unrighteous. He will prepare the land. He will honor his covenants. He will establish his priestly order. And he will provide kindness and mercy for everybody. And he will re-establish women who has been ravished out of their roles, abused over 4,500 plus years to fulfill their role. And doing Genesis 3 and what has happened there. Okay, there's one more time that our Father has spoken to Moses in Deuteronomy, but it is when he called Moses home on the final day. This is the last time that he spoke to Moses in terms of giving instructions to Moses. But the final time that he spoke, and Jehovah spoke to Moshe, was the day that he called him and says, come, it's time to go home. So for us, there is this call to be righteous and steadfast as Noah in his days. And we pray that we will find favor in the sight of our Father as Noah did. He was confronted with evil unimaginable. And he remained righteous and he remained steadfast. And had the ability to then recount the truth of our Father to his sons and to his grandsons later on. And may we find favor to be able to do the same and reproduce kind of the kind. Physically, yes. Spiritually, yes. And to the glorification of our Father. As I've said, we can always, when prophecy has happened, it's easy to say it has happened. You can look back. Looking forward is difficult, because otherwise there's no room for faith. So we still keep faith, but we're also watchful. More so as we see the fig tree becoming ready, and more so as we're seeing the days of Noah encroaching. And we wait. Will we be the generation? I don't know. Nobody knows. For reasons of strengthening our faith, not for calculating specific days and times. Father, pray that you will help us, that you will guide us to stand righteous and upright as Noah was in his days. And that we will take encouragement from this week's Torah reading. That you will not forsake your word. That you will honor your word. And as you have spoken to Moses, your words in terms of the covenant with the land, its people, and yes, the restoration of the inheritance of especially women, that you will help us, guide us, mentor us through your Spirit to walk according to your word. That you will be with us. Help us to also bring words of restoration through the blood of the Lamb and the testimony and the words of our testimony after your goodness. Because your word has not changed, but you have brought us back into the fold as we see the fig tree becoming ready. And I pray for everybody here that we will be guided by your word of truth. Even though we see things and we read things of evil and iniquity and wickedness, that we will not become discouraged by them, that it will not drive us away from you, that it will not make us weak, but that it will actually encourage us to also encourage one another and to be strengthened in you, so that we can become strong. Chazak, v'ni chazak. That we can be strong in you, our Father, our Messiah. Amen.